Good evening, my YouTube viewers. It's Crystal here. I want to carry on from the video that I made this morning where I did an analysis of Boston house prices. And now what I wanted to do is I want to do a very simple dashboard with Boston house prices because I've never done a dashboard before. So this is a good exercise for me and you to do a dashboard. So if you recall in my video this morning, I had the raw data, which I will show you the raw data. That's the raw data, but and then of which I did an analysis. But what I did was I made a copy of that sheet. So you've got the raw data, you keep that, but then me personally, I made a copy of that sheet to make a table. And then so also because the calculations I wasn't really sure of, I decided where it says number of, let me see if I can find this. It accidentally slipped off. I didn't do that. But the number of rooms, it wasn't an integer, it was a float. So I rounded the number of rooms to an integer, and then the age, it wasn't an integer, it was a float, so I rounded that. The distance to employment, that was a float, so I rounded that. The pupil-teacher ratio, that was a float, so I rounded that to an integer as well. Lower economic status, that was a float, so I rounded that to an integer as well. And I didn't use blacks because the thing is I'm sure that it's not politically correct, and if I was going to do an analysis on blacks, I'm sure that people would complain. People on YouTube might complain and report me, and if I make a blog post, people making the blog post might complain and report me. So I'm not even touching that, not with a 10-foot pole. And then so all of the columns that were floats that I intended to use, I made in an extra column where it's just integers, and it is the integers that I'm going to use, and I'm going to do that for my dashboard. So in order to create a table, you go into home, you say format as a table, which I've already formatted it as a table, but you say format as a table, and then you pick the format that you want, and I picked blue and white format. And after you formatted it with the table, then what you want to do is you want to make a pivot table. But the thing is before you format your raw data as a table, you need to perform an analysis on that data first. And the reason why is because once you format it as a table and do all your work, then it's going to be difficult to unformat it. But there is a way that you can unformat it. So where it says table design, you can say convert to range. So if you want to unformat it as a table under table design, you say convert to range. So now what we want to do is we want to make pivot tables and charts for the columns of data that we're going to be using. So the first pivot table that we're going to make is going to be on the average value of rooms. So we come over here to our pivot table and we create a pivot table. And how you create a pivot table is what I'm going to do. In order to create this pivot table, I'm going to do another pivot table, and I'm going to say tax. I think I'm going to talk about tax. Let's see where we can find property tax. We're going to find property tax. So we're going to do a pivot table on property tax. So you come over here and then you say insert pivot table, and we want it on a new worksheet. So we click OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here. We're going to find property tax, or we're going to find tax. We're going to find property tax, and we're going to move it over to rows. And then we're going to find median value, and we're going to click on the little arrow, and we're going to say value field settings, and we're going to click on the average median value. And then that is your pivot table for tax. So we're going to say tax. The AVG, we'll say MEDV. So tax fee MEDV. But what we're going to do is we're going to move it over here, change it to AVG value on, we're going to move it to average value on tax, and that's what we're going to call it. So now what we want to do is we want to make a chart on this pivot table. So when we make a chart on the pivot table, we go to insert, and then we go to pivot chart. So we've got our pivot chart, and this is the recommendation, and there's not a lot that you can do with a pivot chart. This is recommendation. I'm going to try a bar chart. I like bar charts better. So we'll say OK. And then we'll say we're going to say average value on tax. So that's our chart. That's our pivot chart. So we've made a pivot table and we've made a pivot chart. So now we come over here, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy this pivot chart. We're going to go to the first sheet, which is your dashboard, which is something that I've already created. And so we're going to paste it. We're going to paste the pivot chart. So, and then after we have pasted the pivot chart, what we want to do after we've done that, we want to put a slider in there. So we're going to say where it says insert, see if we can find a slicer. So it says existing connections on this workshop. So we're supposed to be able to create a slicer. So now, yeah, you click onto the pivot chart, and now what we wanted to do was the average value was on tax, property tax. So we say okay. So we've got this slicer on the property tax. So now that we've got the slicer on the property tax, you can select what property tax you want. And you know, they've got, let's check property tax for 7-Eleven. So there's your property tax for 7-Eleven. Let's check property tax for $198. So there's your property tax for $198. Then we'll check property tax for $187. So if you want to take the slicer off, then you click over here onto this little X, and that will take the slicer off, and it will tell you what the property value is based upon the tax. So you can see that you've got, which I don't really understand it that much, because I would think, this is just my personal opinion, I would think that the higher the tax is, the higher the property value, but it doesn't really look like that's the case, because you've got 255, it looks like 255 tax, and it's got a 50, an average value of 50. So what I would assume is the really high tax is going to be the high property value. But another one, you've got a property value of about 20, and you've got tax of 430. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but that's what it is. And so that's just something to keep in mind, that even though it doesn't make sense, that's what it is. So we've done our dashboard, and you can see here I did a dashboard and a slicer or a slider with number of rooms. So come over here to 6 rooms. So you can see that the value is about $20,000 if it's got 6 rooms, and the value is like $17,000 if it's got 4 rooms. And if you want to take the slider out, you can, and it takes it back to show you the average. And then we've got the house age as well. So we'll come over here to house age of 6, and the value is about $25,000. And we'll say house age of 87, and it's about less than $30,000. But we take off the slicer, and you can see that the older houses seem to me to have the less value. But you have one here that I think is 23 years old, and it's 50,000 pounds or dollars, because Boston uses dollars. Now we come over here to lower economic status, and that is basically poor people. And so what you found out when you use the slicer is that the more people of a low economic status you have in a neighborhood, the lower the house values are going to be. So the less people that you have of a lower economic status, the more expensive the houses are going to be. So you can see here on the bar chart that if you have a 2% of economic status, the houses are going to be about 45,000 pounds. But if you have 37% low economic status, the value of the houses are going to be less than 20,000 pounds. So we can check for 3% economic status, and you can see that the value of the house is about 45,000 pounds. But we come over here to 35% economic status, and the value of the house is going to be less than $15,000. And anytime I said pounds, I didn't mean it. I meant dollars. It's just I'm living in the UK, and sometimes I forget that it's dollars and not pounds. So if I said pounds, just disregard that. It's dollars. So now we go over here and click onto the little X of the slider, and that shows you everything you've got. And then we've got the property tax, which we have already covered. So this is your dashboard, and if you can put as many items on your dashboard as you want to. And so I've only put these 2 items on my dashboard. I'm just learning how to make dashboards myself. And I just thought, well, if I'm learning how to make dashboards, then other people are learning how to make dashboards as well. So they'll need to know how to make a dashboard, which is why I've done this. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude this video because I've made the dashboard. We've got 4, I believe we've got 4 graphs, and 1 graph I've made so you could watch me do it. And we put slider in, and I've showed you how to use the sliders. So I've covered everything that I intended to cover. So if you like my video, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching my video. I look forward to making another video for you in the future about more technological topics.